Thank you very much, Brenda. I think you're giving your age away there. Because if you were a teenager when I was playing, you must be very old. I've known Brenda for a long time. Thank you very much for inviting me along. As anyone will know, I've got to keep it to 15 minutes, so I don't know if I can keep it that short because I do go on. I'm not particularly organized. I go on a tangent. But as I sat there, I thought, what am I going to talk about? And what I want to talk about, and I'll tell you why, because there are many different things to talk about. And we've seen what's been going on in the last couple of weeks. There's obviously the whole Brexit situation, and of course, being a footballer and being told 30 years ago, when the drive to kick racism out of football started, that, you know, it won't be long. Here we are 30 years later, and nothing's really changed. So I want to talk about discrimination. Isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible, discrimination? Harvey Weinstein, those two guys who racially abused Raheem Sterling, whoever else have got caught and we've mentioned, isn't it terrible? So, they're the symptoms. What is the cause? What is the cause of discrimination? And why I particularly say discrimination as opposed to racism, because sexism, homophobia, racial discrimination, it's all the same. The different dynamic in terms of the group it affects, but where does the idea come from? It comes from the perception that we have of a particular group and their capabilities, which has been taught to us subconsciously for hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. So for the last 400 or 500 years, we've been told a particular thing about black people, about Muslims, about women, about homosexuals. And now in the last 20 years, we're now being told, well, you know what you've learned and what life has shown you for the last 400 years. That's all wrong. And when asked the question, why? The answer is, well, we're all equal. It's not as simplistic as that. We have to deconstruct the idea of where those perceptions come from. And that is why history is very important. History is very important because what it has done, and we live in a Western society for the last 400 years, the whole world has become Westernized. So what we have actually learned is that we have learned that there are certain groups of people who are superior intellectually and morally. We have wrongly learned that there are a certain group of people who are intellectually and morally superior to us. So therefore, how can we help but either feel inferior, or how can we blame the dominant group for looking down on us and feeling superior to us? Because this is what they have been wrongly told. This is what we've all been wrongly told. So it's very simplistic to point the finger and say, well, we know who the perpetrators and the culprits are. It's white middle-class men or white upper-class men. However, what have we learned about each other? I'm from Jamaica. Not only what have I learned, and this is me looking back and thinking about my childhood growing up as a middle-class Jamaican whose father went to Sandhurst with Andrew Parker Bowles, who was brought up in the high echelons of Jamaican society, which I didn't think about at the time. But me looking back, and what did I think about my classmates at school who were dark-skinned and thick-lipped? Did I feel superior to them? Yes, I did, because of what life wrongly showed me about who is worthy and who's not. What would we think about the ability or the capability of a woman if she becomes the Liverpool manager next week? What impression would we have of her? So we know why we think what we do. We know why we think what we do. So we have to deconstruct those misconceptions that have been wrongly shown to us. So it's very easy to point the finger at Liam Neeson and point the finger at Amber Rudd and point the finger at the two racist supporters who racially abused Raheem Sterling. But if we look at ourselves and say, do we really see everybody as equal? And I'll tell you why I say that. Because I went to Rwanda to promote peace and reconciliation between the Hutu and the Tutsis. And what they're actually having is a truth and reconciliation, whereby we know that, I won't go into the history of it, whereby certain Hutus were made to commit atrocities because they wanted to, the Hutu army wanted to make everybody guilty. So they had normal Hutu people who were married to Tutsis, and I met a man who actually had to kill his wife. And I met him and he was a very normal man. And then how could I judge that man? Because in that situation, what would I do? I'm very thankful that we're not in that situation, but how could I actually judge that man? Because of what he was wrongly told about Tutsis and what Tutsis were wrongly told about Hutus. So this is how we've become indoctrinated. So I'm much more concerned, rather than telling you about what I went through when I was a footballer and bananas were thrown at me and it was terrible because I was racially abused, I'm now talking about what is the solution. How are we going to come up with a solution? I'm very fortunate. Well, with 7 children, you'd think that at least 2 of them would be doctors. So I'm very fortunate in that respect. So I've got 2 children who are doctors. My son's a plastic surgeon, funny enough. Women don't get excited. It's not cosmetic surgery. It's car crashes and burns. However, why I mention that is because what medicine will tell you is that If you have a disease, you have to treat the cause, not the symptom. The symptom means it keeps coming back. So we have to look at what is the cause of discrimination. And I make no bones and talk about discrimination, because being black, it's very easy for me to talk about racial discrimination. As a woman, you can talk about people being sexist. As a homosexual, it's about homophobia. But that's why I say I talk about it, discrimination generally, because of what we have been wrongly told about all the disadvantaged groups. So therefore, I'm looking at what is the solution to the problem. And the solution is not, like a disease, not to treat the symptom of Harvey Weinstein, of the 2 Chelsea fans who racially abused Raheem Sterling. It is what is the cause. And the cause is the environment we're brought up in to make us think the way we do. Now, the first thing we have to do in treating anything, or if you want to get to the end of it, and I started off by talking about 30 years ago when we started the whole idea of kick racism out of football. And if you just tell people to keep their mouths shut, all they have to do is keep their mouths shut for 90 minutes and continue to be as racist as they want for the other 6 days of the week. Is that the solution to getting rid of racism? No. Football can do nothing to get rid of racism. Society has to. But because before we're football fans, we're members of society. Before we're the police, we're members of society. So when you talk about institutionalized racism, these are individuals who have their own perceptions of discrimination going into different institutions. So I'm not a big fan of the idea of institutionalized racism. It's individuals who think that way. So what is the solution? How do we get people to change what they think? We have to deconstruct, first of all, accept that we understand why they are the way they are. So therefore, let us have the debate, an open, honest debate as to the way people truly feel, rather than being afraid to come forward and say what they really feel, as with Liam Neeson coming forward and saying what he really feels and being shot down straight away, which means that anybody who may feel that, well, I do discriminate, I can't help it because of the way I've been brought up. If I come out and say I do, people are going to want me to be put in prison. So therefore, I'll keep my mouth shut. And then what do? It's Harvey Weinstein. It's the two men who racially abused Raheem Sterling. It's Luis Suarez, and the rest of society is fine. So the solution is to look at what the cause of it is. So if you look at what the cause of it is, you go back to when people are telling you about the intellectual and moral worth of blacks, of women, of homosexuals for the last 400 years. And what we have to understand is that even our great emancipators, William Wilberforce, Thomas Jefferson, whoever you want to talk about, not for 1 minute did any one of them ever feel, I'm going to talk about black now, that black people were intellectually or morally equal. They knew it was wrong to enslave them. Even Abraham Lincoln himself said he is not even thinking about making black people socially or politically equal, but he knew it was wrong for them to be slaves. From my perspective is, enslave me, but see me as equal. See me as equal intellectually and morally. And that's the most important thing. So we have to understand that this is the way we have been brought up in the last 400 years. So this is the way we actually think subliminally, and this is the way we have become conditioned. So therefore, the solution to the problem is to have this debate and to understand why we think the way we do before we can actually change it. Now, when people talk about, I'm not racist because I voted for Obama, I love Beyonce, John Barnes is my favorite player. This happens all the time, and of course, we would all have heard that. And now, I would say I'm on a different path. You're talking about what difference can we make. And for too long, we have been told that the solution to the problem is to get more women, more black people, more homosexuals into positions of power, and then we'll bring everybody up with us. I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but if you look from the Magna Carta to the French Revolution, when an elite group have told the working classes that we're acting on your behalf, if you help us to get where we want, we will help you, that has never worked. That has never worked, and it never will work. What will work is for them to change the perception. So don't change the perception of John Barnes. Change the perception of the average black man walking down the street. That's what we have to change, because what people have done is they have elevated me out of blackness. So many managers have said to me, and people who I know have said to me, oh, I don't see you as being black, and they think they're paying me a compliment. And I'm sure you would have heard that before. And if I was to challenge them and I say to them, if you don't see me as being black, what do you see me as being? And in their own mind, as much as they wouldn't say it, they will just say, normal. So isn't black normal? And what is your perception of black that I'm not? Because I don't wear my jeans around my ass and smoke a spliff and have a dreadlocks. Now, it may be quite funny. However, this is a very crucial thing I'm saying, because we have to change the impression of what black is, not any black individual. Because we all know as human beings it's wrong to discriminate, and we like to pat ourselves on the back when all of a sudden we vote for Obama or Beyonce is our favorite singer. But how do we view the average black man in the street? And it's okay when we talk about looking at whoever, if you happen to like Theresa May, or whoever great female politician, and say, well, I like her, but what's your opinion of the average woman in business? And this is what we have to change. We don't have to change and get more black elite into positions. We have to get more average black people in average jobs. It's a very difficult thing to do. But the most important thing is when I talk, and I talk to universities a lot about this, and I make everybody feel comfortable by holding my hand up and saying, I am unconsciously biased. I've changed the wording on it to being unconsciously racist, because everybody gets scared when you say that. I'm unconsciously biased. And why I'm unconsciously biased is because for years, life has shown me that there are certain people who are moral and intellectually better than others. And unfortunately, it has empowered a particular group of people over others to make them feel superior. And as much as you may say Brexit has nothing to do with it, it has a lot to do with the fact that being British means that we are fantastic, we're fine by ourselves. History has shown us that we have morally, intellectually, altruistically gone and helped everybody all over the world, especially the Chinese in the Opium War, the Mau Mau's in Kenya, we're civilizing them. And this is what we have learned. This is what we have learned. And I always wonder when I watch films, like in the old days, and you look at Gordon, and you look at Gordon in Sudan with the dervishes, and we're told about these black savages who have no coordination, no organization, but they managed to beat the British Army. And then you see the films of Gordon after every British soldier has been killed, and these wild savages are running around. I don't think that's really happened. And what happened? I don't think that's what happened. I don't necessarily think that Livingstone found the source of the Nile. I think a black man put him on his back and took him to where it is. However, the point I'm making is the history that we have learned has empowered a certain group of people. And that is what's happening now when we just think, because look what's happened in the past. In the past, we can go and do our own trade deals. We know what the trade deals were like in the past. I mean, they were very one-sided, and I think we can still do that. But because we have had this skewed idea of who we actually are and how we got to where we are, we get to the situation where we is. So I'm trying to be balanced when I explain all this, because it is completely understandable to be racist, to be sexist, to be homophobic, because what we have been wrongly told. Because of what we have been wrongly told. So the solution is to look at the cause of it, understand why we were told what we were told, to justify colonialism, slavery, what do you want to talk about, subjugating women, looking at homosexuals, and understand that the first thing to do is acknowledge it exists amongst all of us. Because, and I mentioned this, and I'm very comfortable in saying this, because I know I'm working on my discriminatory ideas, because this is where I've been brought up. And if I was going to war, and someone says to you, if you're going to go to war, and you're going to go, would you rather have a big skinhead with a tattoo with a gun beside you, or a homosexual? And of course, because of the misconception we have of what we've been told about homosexuals, I suppose we would then say, I'd rather have that big skinhead because he knows what he's doing. Yeah? So, but unfortunately, anybody who says that will then, people will come down on them and say, you're sexist, you're racist. You have a situation, which I'm going to leave you with two things, because that man's been flashing the light at me, and I've got a train back up north. First of all, it affects all of us. It affects all of us. What do Jamaicans think about Trinidadians? What do Nigerians think about Ghanaians? And I will say coloureds, because in South Africa they are called coloureds, so don't have a go at me, because that's what they call themselves. Coloureds think about blacks. So therefore we do discriminate. We do discriminate. And so if you look at one of the greatest emancipators, one of the greatest men that had ever lived, Gandhi. What a great man Gandhi was. He was a great man. Now, when Gandhi was educated at the temple, Gandhi then saw that he is equal, morally and intellectually, to any white person. And he was. Therefore, when he went to South Africa and he saw the way that his people were treated, he then knew that because I am equal to any white person, so do people who look like me. So do people who look like me. But if you see the writings and what Gandhi thought of black people, I'm not going to go into it now in terms of when he called them savages and uncivilized, because he was brought up in a Western educated society that taught him that. So if the great Gandhi feels that way, or the great William Wilberforce, what chance has the average person got? So it's not as simplistic as just saying, well, we're all equal. We have to deconstruct where this idea came from. And just to give you something very topical about the debate that has to be had, an open, honest debate, whereby we have to move forward, is a situation that happened a couple of days ago with Amber Rudd. When Amber Rudd was giving an interview, and they got me on to have a go at Amber Rudd, and she spoke about, sorry, remind me of her name. Diane Abbott. Amber Rudd made a very interesting point. Because when I was on the Big Brother, it's taking 2 minutes, Big Brother, I wanted to have this conversation with Ann Widdecombe and Rachel Johnson, because it is the year of the woman, and they were talking about equality for women. And I said to them, you know, when everything's equal, hypothetically, everything is equal, 50 men, 50 women, joint prime ministers, man, woman, secretary of state, hypothetically, it's not going to happen, but 50 men, 50 women, and then you're completely equal. You're the woman, women are now completely equal. I said, would any one of you women, Ann Widdecombe, Rachel Johnson, you're all there clicking your glasses, would you look around and think to yourselves, of all us women, there's not one black woman here? And of course, they all went, oh, yeah, I would think that, I would think that. And until I brought to their attention, they wouldn't think that. So when Amber Rudd brought up that very same point, salient point, which needs to be discussed to empower women, and she actually said that it's very difficult for women in politics. Very difficult for women in politics, but it's even harder for a colored woman like Diane Abbott. Oh, sorry, I said colored instead of black. That's what they picked on. So let's get rid of Amber Rudd because she said colored. Instead of thinking about the context in which she's talking about, the very serious point that let's now have the debate about either the lack of black women in politics or the lack of opportunities, yes, that women get, but more importantly, black women get, that is now gone. That discussion is now gone because we play with semantics to say she said the wrong word. And this is what we have to stop doing. We have to look at the context in which things are taken, to have an open and honest discussion about the way we feel, then we can move forward. So it's not just Luis Suarez and the two racist guys who racially abused Raheem Sterling or Harvey Weinstein. We have to look at ourselves and be open and honest with ourselves to have the conversation so that we can build from the bottom up, not the other way around. Thank you.